Somewhere in the Congo Basin, deeper than most maps bother to name, the research team entered a restricted zone in 2019. They weren't looking for anything unusual. Their equipment was standard, their permits were cleared, their objective was routine environmental survey work, the kind that gets filed, archived, and forgotten. But what they documented in that final week of fieldwork was quietly pulled from publication before it was ever released. Not revised, not delayed, pulled. If you were standing in that jungle right now, you wouldn't hear anything unusual. That is exactly what the team said, right up until the moment they stopped filing updates. We have the original report, and what is inside it is where this starts. The Congo Basin covers over 2 million square kilometers. The East is the second largest rainforest on Earth, and by most scientific measures, one of the least understood places on the planet. Less than 20% of its deep interior has ever been formally surveyed. The teams that do go in don't always come back with clean answers. Number 7. The killing water. There are lakes in the eastern Congo that look perfectly still. No current, no visible disturbance. Nothing on the surface that would tell you to stop walking toward them. But without warning, no tremor, no smell, no sound, they release. A dense, invisible cloud of gas erupts from the water and moves across the ground, hugging the surface, filling every low point in the terrain. Animals drop first, then insects, then anything else that breathes. Within minutes, the radius around the lake is silent in a way that has no natural equivalent. Scientists call it a limnic eruption. They understand the basic mechanics. CO, saturated depths, sudden release. But what they cannot explain is the timing. Local communities in the region have tracked these events for generations. And they will tell you, not as folklore, but as practical knowledge passed down for survival, that it happens on a cycle. Same season, sometimes the same week. Geological events don't follow calendars. Natural systems don't keep schedules. Which raises a question that no researcher has formally answered. If the timing isn't random, what is controlling it? Number 6. The creature that shouldn't exist deep in a restricted zone of the northern Congo. The network of camera traps was set up to monitor elephant migration patterns. The team reviewed the footage, expecting the usual movement timestamps, nothing remarkable. What they found on 3 separate cameras, positioned kilometers apart, was the same silhouette. Large, moving upright. Not a gorilla, not a chimpanzee, not anything that matched the region's known primate catalogue. The posture was wrong for every classified species in that ecosystem. The stride was wrong, and it moved through dense undergrowth at a pace that, frame by frame, doesn't correspond to anything currently documented in Central African wildlife records. The footage was submitted to 2 separate university research departments for classification review. Neither published a response. No rejection, no explanation, no record of the submission being received at all. If you were a researcher sitting across from that footage for the first time, the unsettling part wouldn't be what you are looking at. It would be realizing that whatever it is, it already knew where the cameras were. In every frame, it never looks directly at one. The migration study was quietly concluded. The camera trap data was archived under a non-public access classification. The silhouette has no name, no file, no species page, and somewhere in that restricted zone, it is still moving. Number 5. The underground sound. In the early 2000s, seismic monitoring stations positioned along the Albertine Rift began picking up something that didn't belong. A low-frequency pulse, deep rhythmic, coming from beneath the forest floor at consistent intervals that the equipment wasn't designed to ignore. The first assumption was geological. A fault system, residual volcanic activity, something with a rational origin buried under enough rock to make identification difficult standard procedure. Seismic anomalies in the rift zone are not uncommon, but geological activity is irregular. It shifts, it responds to pressure, to temperature, to the movement of tectonic systems that operate on their own unpredictable timescale. This didn't shift, it pulsed at the same interval. For months, then years, with a consistency that no known natural system in that region could produce. 3 separate recording teams were deployed to get closer readings. Each one logged the same result, not in their data, but in their field notes. Within approximately 40 kilometers of the source coordinates, the pulse stopped completely. As if whatever was generating, it became aware of the approach. Equipment was checked, recalibrated, redeployed silence every time. The moment teams withdrew beyond that radius, it resumed. No formal explanation has ever been filed. The monitoring stations still operate. The pulse is still being recorded. And whatever it is beneath that forest floor, it has been down there, rhythmic and patient, for longer than anyone has been listening. Number 4. The village that relocated overnight routine satellite imaging of the Congo interior is not headline work. It is methodical, unglamorous, coordinates-logged images captured, changes flagged for review. Most of what gets flagged is environmental, deforestation, river shifts, erosion patterns. In 2014, an analyst flagged something different. A settlement, several hundred structures, clearly inhabited based on heat signature and ground activity in the prior image set, was gone. Not destroyed, not burned. The structures were intact. The layout was undisturbed. But the people, the animals, the fires, every indicator of active habitation had vanished between 2 satellite passes 11 days apart. No conflict had been reported in that region. No government relocation order existed for those coordinates. No NGO, no aid organization, no military presence had logged any operation within 100 kilometers. Our ground team was dispatched weeks later. When they reached the site, the structures were still standing. Cooking fires had burned down to ash, but the ash hadn't scattered. No wind disturbance, no animal interference. The settlement looked less like it had been abandoned and more like it had been paused, mid-task, mid-meal. Midday, if you were standing in that clearing, the silence wouldn't feel like absence. It would feel like interruption. The analyst's report was filed internally. It did not circulate. The coordinates have not appeared in any subsequent imaging review, and no record exists of where several hundred people went or why they left everything behind, as if they expected to return. Number 3. The marked trees in 2011, a botanical survey team pushing into a zone with no recorded history of human habitation, made a discovery that stopped their work entirely. Trees, thousands of them, marked not randomly, not the kind of casual scarring that animals or weather produce on bark. These were deliberate incisions, precise, repeated, arranged in a sequence that the team's lead botanist described in her field notes as intentional beyond any reasonable doubt. The same symbol across 60 square kilometers of dense, unbroken forest. The team photographed and catalogued what they could and submitted the documentation to 3 separate institutions specializing in Central African linguistics, archaeology, and cultural anthropology. None of them could place it. The symbols matched nothing in any known archive. No regional tribe, no historical civilization, no colonial era marking system. Nothing currently documented in any database of Central African cultural or linguistic record produced a match. Then the dating results came back. Some carvings were over 2,000 years old. That alone would have been significant evidence of a civilization operating deep in a zone considered uninhabited for the entirety of recorded history. But others were recent, within the last decade, possibly less. Same symbol, same depth of incision, same deliberate spacing between marks. 2,000 years apart, and whoever is making them never stopped. The survey team's full findings were never formally published. The location remains unclassified on regional maps. And somewhere in that forest, on trees that haven't been found yet, marks are still being made. Number 2, the recovered capsule in 2017, a Belgian geological survey organization, deployed a research drone into the Congo interior, standard equipment, documented flight path, routine atmospheric and terrain mapping, the kind of operation that generates data, not headlines. The drone lost contact with its operators approximately 4 hours into the mission. Signal dropout in that region is common enough that the loss was logged, reported, and eventually closed without recovery. No search was mounted, the terrain made retrieval impractical. 2 years later, a local hunter working in the deep forest reported finding a piece of equipment he didn't recognize. When researchers reached him and confirmed the serial number, it was the drone, intact. No crash damage, no structural failure, sitting on the forest floor as if it had been placed there deliberately. The problem was the location, 340 kilometers from its last confirmed coordinates, beyond the operational range of its fuel capacity, by a margin that no technical failure, wind current, or navigational error could account for. The physics of how it arrived at that location have never been resolved. The camera drive was wiped completely. A clean erasure. Not corruption, not damage, formatted. One frame remained, recovered from a damaged sector of the drive that the wipe hadn't fully reached. That image has not been publicly released. The organization that operated the drone has not commented on its contents. 2 researchers who were present during the drive recovery have not spoken about it publicly since. Whatever that drone encountered in those 4 hours, something made sure it couldn't be followed. And one frame was left behind, whether by accident or intention. Nobody will say. Number 1, the restricted coordinates there is a set of GPS coordinates in the deep Congo that appears in no public database with any label, any designation, or any explanation. No nature reserve, no research zone, no governmental boundary marker, just a flag across 4 separate national and international geographic databases. The same coordinates, flagged as restricted, with nothing attached to explain why. That alone would be unusual. What makes it something else entirely is what surfaces when you trace those coordinates backward through historical records. They appear in a Belgian colonial expedition log from 1934. The entry is brief, clinical. It describes the team reaching the location, conducting an unspecified observation, and departing. The final line of that entry reads, "Do not return." The same coordinates appear again in a Congolese government survey from 1971. The file is partially redacted. What remains visible contains the same instruction, worded differently. Then again in a joint environmental report from 1998, then in a private expedition record from 2021, 4 separate teams, 4 separate eras. No communication between them. The same location, the same conclusion. The 2021 team was the most recent to log those coordinates. The YIF filed no follow-up report. Their project page was removed from their organization's website without announcement. The funding body listed on their permits no longer has a registered address. The coordinates are still flagged right now. Tonight, in 4 databases that have no reason to coordinate with each other and yet somehow arrived at the same decision about the same point on the map. No one has explained what is at those coordinates. No one who has reached them has ever chosen to say. And somewhere in the Congo, in a place that 4 generations of explorers agreed should not be revisited. Whatever they found is still there, waiting in the same silence it has always kept. The Congo Basin is still there, larger than most people can hold in their minds, older than any expedition that has ever entered it, and largely, fundamentally, unknown. The lakes still release on their cycle. The silhouette still moves through the restricted zone. The pulse beneath the rift is still being recorded, patient and rhythmic, 40 kilometers from anyone who tries to find it. The marked trees stand in a forest. No map bothers to name. The drone's final frame sits in a file that no one will open publicly. And those coordinates, flagged across 4 databases, visited across 4 generations, remain exactly where they have always been. Nobody went back, or if they did, they made the same decision as everyone before them. To say nothing, the Congo doesn't bury its secrets. It doesn't need to. It simply remains vast enough, dark enough, and patient enough to keep everything it has ever been shown. The question that none of the reports, none of the filed logs, none of the quietly closed investigations ever answered is the simplest one. What do 4 separate teams, separated by decades, by language, by every difference that makes human beings strangers to each other, what do they all see at the same coordinates that produces the same 2 words? Do not return. We don't know. And perhaps that is exactly how it was meant to stay,